Greetings, cockpit country warriors and allies around the world. As we know, Jamaica stands at a crossroads of its history. With the threat of mining in cockpit country, the very ecological future of the island is at stake. But make no mistake, this is not only an environmental problem. This is also a question of historical justice, the legacies of slavery and colonialism, and the present-day ramifications of the Maroon Wars. I am inspired by much of what I have seen on social media, especially in the Cockpit Country Warriors Facebook group. However, I am going to share with you why I think the voice of the Maroons should be at the very center of this struggle. But first, you're probably wondering who I am. My name is Dr. Robert Connell, and I am an environmental researcher, historian, and anthropologist of the African diaspora, based at the University of California. Yes, I live a long way away from Yard, but this issue is very close to my heart. Although I live in the United States, my mother is from Ochi. In fact, that side of my family has Maroon ancestry itself, and during my visits to Jamaica as a child, I would learn about the Maroon legends and lore. As I completed my environmental studies degree in the early 2000s, I began to hear about Maroon opposition to mining in cockpit country. Actually, to say the Maroons were opposed is an understatement. In 2007, Colonel of Accompong Sidney Petty publicly declared that any mining in cockpit country would be a violation of Maroon sovereignty and an act of war. Wow! Does anybody remember that? Kojo Day, January 6, 2007. Where were you? The first time in over 200 years that Jamaica faced the prospect of a Maroon war. The reason that mining did not start over 10 years ago, when the first prospecting licenses were actually drawn up, is largely because of that resolute stance, as well as pressure from environmental groups. Maroon resistance to mining set in motion the whole series of events upon which we now stand. The boundary study, the follow-up consultations, the declaration of the forest preserve. None of that would have happened without Maroon resistance. This was such an interesting and important subject that I thought, surely, in the years following 2007, someone in Jamaica must be writing about this. Alas, there was nothing, except for a few articles in the Gleaner and Observer. Well, in the words of the late Toni Morrison, if there is a book that you want to read, but it hasn't been written yet, then you must write it. It took a long time, friends, but in 2017, I finally completed my dissertation, The Political Ecology of Maroon Autonomy. I will provide a link to it online at the end of this video, but it is also available as a hard copy in Accompong Town, where I lived in 2014 and have visited many times since. As such, I humbly present myself as something of an expert in these issues. So I will admit, it is a long read, but I have compiled and analyzed a lot of information on this subject. However, today, I just want to summarize here one of the most important findings of my research, and I will discuss other points in future videos. Most Jamaicans know that in 1739, a peace treaty was signed between the Maroons and the British after decades of war. Now, I know there's some confusion on the year. Many people reference 1738, and I won't go into the details, but that was based on an old style of British calendar that was used at the time. By modern standards of our present-day calendar, it actually occurred in 1739. Anyway, the treaty terms provided for the delineation of Maroon territory in cockpit country and the Maroons' collective right to live thereafter, and I quote, in a perfect state of freedom and liberty. Unfortunately for the Maroons, the British leadership in colonial Jamaica proved to be duplicitous in their dealings. Indeed, my historical archival research discovered a particularly insidious betrayal, one with ongoing consequences for the stability of Jamaica. Between the signing of the treaty on March 1, 1739, and its ratification by an active assembly of Jamaica on May 12th of that year, a preamble was fraudulently added to the treaty describing the Maroons as, I quote, rebels brought to submission. The treaty signed between Captain Kojo of the Maroons and Colonel Guthrie and Lieutenant Sadler of the British contained no such language. However, this fallacious suggestion of an unequal relationship has been used since that time to justify government attempts to deny Maroon rights or even nullify the treaty altogether. Let me illustrate the point clearly. If me and you sign an agreement, and then afterwards I change, add, or delete something from that document, what is that? It's fraud. It's a forgery. This finding challenges almost 300 years of legal precedent towards the Maroons in Jamaica. As such, My research upholds and concurs with the long-standing Maroon position that the treaty remains valid. Any previous legal precedent to the contrary is based on forged documents. It was an agreement between two sovereign peoples, as British High Commissioner to Jamaica Asif Ahmad himself recognized last January in Accompong on Kojo Day. The rights to cockpit country are therefore an issue of international relations. The implication of my research leads me to the strong opinion that there must be a moratorium on mining in and around cockpit country pending a trilateral investigation by the Maroons, the Jamaican government, and the government of the United Kingdom ideally on the status and delineation of Maroon land holdings and self-governance. Since the British violated and distorted a binding treaty, a treaty that was signed in the very heart of cockpit country, the ownership of cockpit country cannot be considered settled. Only a trilateral investigation, followed by direct negotiations with the Maroon leadership on how to update an 18th century treaty to 21st century realities, can ultimately resolve this issue. Finally, as I conclude, I think back to the monumental natural beauty of cockpit country. I have been lucky in my life to travel or live in every inhabited continent of the world. But my memories of waking up in Accompong every morning, looking out over the cockpits, stands out as a natural wonder on this earth. If you feel the same way about cockpit country, know that the Maroons have been stewards of that land since before the English even set foot in Jamaica. Surely they deserve a decisive voice at the table. I regret that I have been so quiet about this up until now, and although I have been working behind the scenes, I cannot remain silent any longer. I ask you to like and share this video. This groundbreaking information must be spread far and wide, in Jamaica and through the diaspora as well. I will talk again soon, but for now, in struggle, Dr. Connell signing off.